The longer you stay single, the more you change in these 6 surprising ways. Senior life advice. Have you ever wondered how long-term singlehood truly changes you? Whether it was by choice or by life's unexpected turns, years without a romantic connection can gradually reshape you in ways you may not even notice. Some of these changes can empower you, making you more independent, stronger, even more peaceful with your own company. But others quietly make it harder to open your heart, even when love is knocking on your door again. In today's video, we're going to explore 6 profound ways that long-term single life can transform your mindset, emotions, and how you see relationships. These shifts often arrive quietly, subtly, like a shadow at dusk. That's why it's so important to recognize them early. Because once you understand what's happening inside of you, you'll be able to see clearly what's helping you grow and what might be silently holding you back. Make sure to stay until the very end, because insight number 6 might just shift the way you see yourself completely. Most importantly, we'll also discuss simple and realistic ways you can keep the strength you've built, while also making room for connection again, if that's what your heart is quietly hoping for. Number 1, you become so independent, it's hard to let anyone in. Have you ever noticed how peaceful your days have become? You wake up when you want, make coffee the way you like it, move through the day without needing to consult or compromise with anyone. There's a certain freedom in that rhythm, a certain quiet strength in knowing that you can do it all yourself. And for many people who've spent years on their own, especially after 50 or 60, that independence becomes more than just a way of living. It becomes a part of who they are. But here's something most people don't realize until much later. The very independence that keeps you grounded can slowly start building walls you don't even know are there. Living alone for a long time means you get used to making decisions entirely on your own. From what to eat for dinner, to how you spend your weekends, to where you keep your kitchen towels, everything is set to your preferences. There's no need to negotiate, no need to adjust. And with time, even the smallest disruption, someone moving a chair, asking to share your space, or suggesting a different way of doing something, can feel intrusive. This is where independence quietly turns into isolation. Researchers at the University of Michigan found in 2021 that older adults who've been single for over a decade tend to score higher on self-reliance and decision-making confidence. But that same study also revealed a surprising downside. Those same individuals reported more difficulty forming new close relationships. They weren't lacking opportunity. They were lacking flexibility. Take Patricia, for example. She's 72, lives in Oregon, and has been on her own since her husband passed away nearly 20 years ago. She gardens, volunteers, and keeps a beautiful home. Everything runs like clockwork. When she reconnected with an old classmate, Donald, it felt like life was offering a second chance. They had coffee. They laughed. There was a spark. But as things progressed, Patricia started pulling back. When Donald asked if she'd like to spend a weekend out of town, her first reaction wasn't excitement. It was discomfort. She didn't like the idea of someone else adjusting her morning routine, suggesting a different time for meals, or even just being in her space for too long. I realized, she said, I had gotten so used to my own rhythm, the thought of bending it, even for someone kind, made me feel anxious. That experience is more common than people think. Dr. Laura Connors, a geriatric psychologist based in California, says, absolute independence is a double-edged sword. It builds resilience, but it can also close the door to meaningful connection. If part of you still wants companionship, you need to leave room, emotionally and practically, for someone else to enter your life. There's nothing wrong with loving your life as it is. But if you ever feel a little lonely at night or wonder if there's still space for someone beside you, it might be time to ask yourself, have I made it too hard for anyone to get close? Think about it. Have you ever gotten frustrated when someone disrupted your usual routine, even in a small way? If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And if you found this part meaningful, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to Golden Wise Elders for more thoughtful, empowering advice, tailored for your stage of life. Number 2, it becomes harder to open up emotionally. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you said to someone, I miss you, or I really need you today? If that feels like a distant memory, or maybe something you've never said out loud, you're not alone. As we get older and spend more years living on our own, we often become very good at keeping things in. Not just our schedules and routines, but our emotions too. At first, it doesn't feel like a problem. You get used to handling things yourself. paying bills, facing challenges, making decisions, and that quiet strength becomes something you wear like armor. People admire you for being so put together, so calm, so fine. But here's the truth no one talks about. Being fine all the time can get very lonely, because while you may have built a strong outer shell, inside there may still be a heart that longs to be seen, heard, and held, even just for a moment. Opening up emotionally isn't something that just happens. It's a skill. And like any skill, it needs practice. When you're in a relationship, you're constantly communicating, sometimes through words, sometimes through silence, sometimes through a simple touch on the shoulder after a long day. But when you've been single for a long time, that part of you can start to shut down. You stop reaching out, you stop expressing needs, and eventually you may even convince yourself that you don't have any. Let that sink in. You might convince yourself that you don't need emotional connection at all. But deep down, we all do. Dr. Sharon Levesque, a clinical gerontologist with over 30 years of experience working with seniors across the U.S., puts it this way: emotional vulnerability isn't weakness, it's the doorway to genuine connection. Without it, relationships stay on the surface, polite, pleasant, but never deep. Take Henry, a 69-year-old retired librarian from Boston. After his divorce in his late 50s, he poured his time into gardening, reading, and long walks by the Charles River. He built a life that looked peaceful from the outside, but whenever someone asked him how he was doing, his answer was always the same: "I'm good, thanks." Even when he wasn't, then came a turning point. He joined a local storytelling circle at the community center. One evening, he shared a personal story, just a few minutes long, about losing his father. To his surprise, someone came up afterward and said, "Thank you. That reminded me of my own dad. I haven't thought about him in years." That small moment opened something in Henry. He realized that sharing didn't make him weaker. It made him feel more alive. Maybe you're like Henry. Maybe there's a part of you that wants to connect more deeply, but it's been so long since you've let your guard down that it feels foreign, even scary. That's okay. Start small. Say "I missed you" to an old friend. Share a memory. Ask for a hug. Allow someone to see the softer side of you, and watch how that small risk creates space for something beautiful to grow. You don't need to open your heart to everyone, but choose someone and try. Because the older we get, the more we realize that real connection isn't about perfection. It's about honesty, presence, and emotional courage. And if you're thinking, that sounds like a lot, remember this: it's never too late to be known, never too late to feel seen, never too late to let someone in. So let me ask you, and be honest, when was the last time you let someone truly know how you're feeling? If this part of the video resonates with you, leave a comment below and tell us, what's one emotion you've been carrying alone for too long? Your story might just open the door for someone else to share theirs. Now, let's gently move to the third shift. Your personal routines become so fixed, they leave no room for change. Picture this. It's Sunday morning. You wake up at 6:45 sharp, put on the same cozy slippers, pour your coffee into your favorite mug, and sit by the window as the sun begins to rise. You have your crossword ready. Your routine is smooth, familiar, comforting. But here's a gentle question. What would happen if someone else was suddenly in that picture? Would you feel comforted, or would you feel disrupted? As the years pass and we live alone for longer stretches, we naturally build a life that fits us like a glove, and that's a beautiful thing. You know what brings you peace. You've designed your days to match your values, your rhythms, your preferences. There's a kind of joy in that precision. But without realizing it, we can become so attached to that structure that we stop being open to any deviation from it. Even when the change could lead to connection, it's not about being stubborn. It's about feeling safe. We've worked hard to find balance in our lives, especially after heartache, divorce, loss, or simply years of solitude. And when someone else steps in with their own habits, opinions, or timing, it can feel like they're shaking up a delicate ecosystem. That's exactly what happened to Leonard, a 70-year-old jazz enthusiast in New Orleans. After living alone for nearly 15 years, Leonard had everything just the way he liked it. He played music in the morning, grilled every Thursday, and watched documentaries before bed. Never missed a beat. Then came Carla, a warm, spontaneous woman he met at a music festival. They clicked immediately, but when she stayed over for a weekend and suggested changing their dinner plans last minute, Leonard froze. He didn't feel angry, just unsettled. He later admitted that her simple request to switch things up felt like someone had moved the furniture inside his head. This isn't uncommon. According to a 2022 study from Stanford University, older adults who have lived alone for over 10 years tend to show lower flexibility in daily routines, even in minor adjustments, which can lead to missed opportunities for bonding. Here's the thing. Your routines are not the problem. They're part of your identity, and they help you feel grounded. But when those routines become non-negotiable, they can quietly close the door on companionship. As Dr. Eugene Marshall, a behavioral gerontologist, explains, healthy routines are like the heartbeat of a peaceful life. But when those routines stop leaving space for shared experiences, they stop being supportive and start being limiting. So what can you do? You don't have to give up your morning coffee, your afternoon walks, or the way you fold your towels. But try asking yourself this. If someone special entered your life, not to take over, but simply to share it, what parts of your day could you loosen up? Could dinner happen 15 minutes later? Could the TV show be something new, even just once a week? Could your Sunday be shared instead of solitary? Because sometimes the smallest adjustments make the biggest difference. Let me ask you directly. Have you ever felt irritated when someone did things differently in your space? Even when their intention was kind? What's one habit you think you have the hardest time changing if someone new entered your life? Drop your answers in the comments. Be honest. There's no judgment here. In fact, your story might help someone else recognize their own patterns. 4. You raise your standards, sometimes so high, they become unrealistic. When you've been single for a long time, you learn a lot about yourself, what you enjoy, what you need, and maybe more importantly, what you won't tolerate. And that clarity, it's powerful. It's one of the greatest gifts of solitude. But here's the catch. Sometimes, in the process of protecting yourself, you begin building a checklist so detailed, so specific, that no real human could ever live up to it. Let's be honest. Have you ever met someone kind, genuine, and interested in you, but you turned them down because they didn't meet one of your must-haves? Maybe they were a little shorter than you preferred. Maybe they didn't love hiking or weren't as articulate as you'd hoped. Maybe they didn't click with you instantly. If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. In our youth, we often explore relationships with curiosity. We're open to differences. We give people a chance to grow on us. But after years of living alone, especially into our 60s and beyond, many of us fall into a mindset of, they have to be just right from the start. That's what happened to Evelyn, a 66-year-old widow in Arizona. She had a full life. Yoga classes, painting, a circle of close friends. When she started dating again, she had a list. No one who watches sports, no snorers, no picky eaters, must love classical music, and absolutely no one with a messy car. Then she met Gary. He was warm, respectful, and truly adored her, but he had a habit of humming country songs while cooking, and he once showed up 5 minutes late with a half-drunk iced tea in his cup holder. Evelyn ended it after 3 dates. Later, she confessed, I realized I wasn't looking for a partner. I was looking for perfection, and I've lived long enough to know that doesn't exist. It's not that high standards are bad. In fact, knowing your worth is essential. But sometimes our standards become a shield, a way to keep ourselves safe from disappointment or even from love itself. A 2020 study from the Journal of Aging and Relationships found that adults over 60 who have been single for more than a decade were more likely to reject potential partners over minor flaws, even when the emotional compatibility was high. The researchers called it romantic idealism bias and noted that it often stems from fear of repeating past mistakes, of losing independence, or of getting hurt again. Dr. Nina Feldman, a relationship psychologist specializing in mature adults, says having standards is healthy, but if your list is so long that no one can pass, you're not protecting your heart, you're closing it. So how do you know the difference between healthy standards and unrealistic ones? Ask yourself, am I looking for a real person, someone keen, open, and willing to grow with me? Or am I waiting for someone who checks every box and might only exist in a movie? It's a hard question, but a necessary one, because real relationships aren't built on perfection. They're built on acceptance, of quirks, of pasts, of mismatched interests that somehow become endearing over time. And maybe that's the point. The person who's right for you may not look like your original picture, but they might bring something better, something real, steady, and nourishing. Let me ask you this, and think about it deeply. Have your standards helped you feel safe, or have they kept you alone? And if you had to cross just one thing off your checklist, just one, What would it be? Share your answer in the comments. You never know. Your honesty might open someone else's heart. If this part of the video speaks to your experience, take a moment to like and subscribe to Golden Wise Elders. We believe that love in later life isn't about finding someone flawless. It's about finding someone whose imperfections feel familiar and worth embracing. Because sometimes the love you've been searching for doesn't come in a perfect package. It comes in a warm smile, a shared story, and a quiet willingness to stay. Number 5. You slowly stop feeling the need for a relationship. It usually starts with a quiet moment. Maybe you're sipping tea by the window, watching the light shift across your living room. There's no noise, no demands, just stillness. And you think to yourself, this isn't so bad. I'm fine. Actually, I'm doing just fine on my own. And maybe you are. One of the most surprising shifts that long-term singlehood brings, especially in our later years, is the slow erosion of urgency. The pressure to find someone fades. The longing for a partner softens. And for many, being alone stops feeling like loneliness and starts to feel like freedom. And that can be a beautiful thing. You no longer feel the need to explain yourself, adjust for anyone, or manage someone else's moods. You filled your days with routines, hobbies, friendships, even small joys. Reading in bed, long walks, quiet coffee shops. You've created a life that is full, simple, and truly yours. But here's the part many don't talk about. Sometimes beneath all that peace, there's a tiny ache. It doesn't scream. It doesn't beg. But every now and then, it whispers, wouldn't it be nice to share this moment with someone? This is the silent tug of war many older adults experience. On one side, you've built a life that works, and works well. On the other, there's still a soft human desire for companionship, but that desire no longer feels urgent. In fact, for many, it starts to feel optional. That's what happened with Richard, a 74-year-old former mechanic in Michigan. After his wife passed away, he spent years adjusting to solitude. At first, the silence was painful, but over time, it became normal, then comforting. He cooked what he liked, traveled when he wanted, and never had to check in with anyone. When asked about dating again, Richard would shrug. Don't need it, he'd say. But during a Thanksgiving dinner with family, his granddaughter sat beside him, leaned her head on his shoulder and said, "Grandpa, I hope someone makes you feel loved again someday." He smiled, but that night something stirred. It wasn't that he needed love, it was that he missed being loved. According to the National Institute on Aging, as people reach their 60s and 70s, their brains adapt to emotional independence. This means the biological urgency for partnership decreases, but the psychological benefit of emotional connection remains just as strong. Dr. Elisa Nguyen, a psychotherapist who works with older adults in San Francisco, explains, it's not about needing a relationship the way we once did. It's about being honest with ourselves. Are we truly content or just comfortable? Because comfort can quietly become avoidance. There's a difference between peace and resignation. And there's a pui between wholeness and emotional retreat. You don't have to crave a relationship. You don't have to chase love. But if you find yourself saying, I'm fine on my own, it's worth gently asking, am I fine, or have I given up on the idea that something deeper is still possible? Let me ask you, and please take a moment with this. Do you genuinely enjoy your solitude, or have you simply adapted to it because it feels safer than trying again? And if someone came along who felt easy to be with, safe and kind, would you welcome them into your life? 6. You become more introspective, sometimes to the point of overthinking. Have you ever caught yourself replaying an old memory at 2 a.m.? Or maybe you've had a conversation, simple, casual, that you later dissected in your mind over and over, wondering if you said too much or not enough. If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. As we grow older, especially when we spend years on our own, the mind becomes our constant companion. And like any companion, it has its gifts and its burdens. One of the most subtle but profound changes that long-term singlehood brings is the increasing tendency to live inwardly. You reflect more, you analyze more, you remember more, you think deeply about what was and what might never be again. In many ways, this introspection is a strength. It helps you understand your values, recognize your emotional patterns, and make wiser choices. Some of the most insightful people you'll ever meet are those who've spent time alone, thinking, observing, learning from their lives. But what happens when reflection turns into rumination? What happens when the mind, left unchecked, loops endlessly through fears, regrets, what ifs, and imagine scenarios that may never come true. That's the trap that Marlene, a 68-year-old retired teacher from Vermont, found herself in. After a late-in-life breakup, she poured her energy into journaling, meditating, and reading books on self-growth. At first, it was healing, but over time, she began avoiding social invitations. She stopped attending her book club. When friends asked how she was, she'd reply, "Still figuring myself out." Eventually, she realized she wasn't figuring herself out anymore. She was hiding behind my own thoughts, she later said. Research from the American Psychological Association shows that older adults who live alone are more prone to overthinking, especially in the absence of consistent emotional exchange. Without regular dialogue, the brain tends to loop. It searches for resolution in solitude, which can lead to emotional fatigue and even increased anxiety. Dr. Miguel Soria, a senior mental health specialist in Seattle, explains it this way. Thinking deeply isn't the issue, it's thinking without balance. The mind needs contrast, fresh perspectives, laughter, warmth, not just analysis. So how do you know if your introspection has crossed into overthinking? Start by asking, do my thoughts energize me or drain me? Do I find peace in solitude or do I feel stuck inside my head? Here's a helpful shift. When your thoughts become heavy, speak them aloud to a friend, a counselor, even a journal. The act of externalizing what's been spinning inside often releases the pressure and creates space for clarity. And sometimes the most healing thing you can do is simply be present, not analyzing, not fixing, just being. Walking outside, listening to music, watching a sunset without turning it into a metaphor. You don't have to understand everything about yourself to live a full, meaningful life. Some questions don't need answers. They just need movement. Let me ask you gently, have you been spending more time inside your thoughts than out in the world? What's one small action, even just a walk, a phone call, a shared meal that could help bring you back into connection? So, let's take a quiet breath together. We've just walked through 6 of the most common and often surprising ways that long-term singlehood can reshape our inner world. You've seen how independence, while empowering, can sometimes make it harder to share space. You've explored how emotional walls can build up without a sound. You've reflected on how personal routines, once helpful, might slowly turn into rigid barriers. You've recognized the line between high standards and impossible expectations. You've felt the comfort of solitude and questioned whether that comfort has quietly turned into avoidance. And finally, you've looked inward at the ways your thoughts can either guide you or trap you. And if you found yourself nodding along to even just one of these, I want you to know something. You are not broken. You are not late. You are not alone. This chapter of your life, however quiet it may seem, is still full of possibility. And connection, it's never out of reach, as long as you're willing to open the door, even just a little. Here's a gentle piece of advice I'll leave you with. Don't wait for the perfect person, the perfect moment, or the perfect version of yourself. Start with where you are, with what you have, with the version of you that's real, honest, and still open, even if just a little cracked from the past. Because love, in all its forms, isn't about filling a void. It's about enriching the life you've already built. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Which of these 6 shifts resonated most deeply with you? Was it the quiet comfort of routine, the surprise of emotional distance, or something else entirely? Share your thoughts in the comments, not just for me, but for the others watching who might need to know that someone else out there feels the same. If you found this video valuable, please consider giving it a like. Share it with someone you care about, someone who might be walking the same path. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Golden Wise Elders and turn on the notification bell, because every week we're here to talk about real life, real emotions, and how to grow wiser, stronger, and more connected as we age. Thank you for spending this time with me. Truly, may the rest of your day be filled with peace, curiosity, and maybe, just maybe, the beginning of something new. Until next time, take good care of your heart. It's still capable of beautiful things.